All right, it is 12 o'clock here on the East Coast of the US. Thank you for watching. When you're joining us, please drop into the comments where you're watching from, as I'd love to see who's joining us as we're getting different folks each time. And we all like to see where everyone's at. So, thank you for joining us. The point of this video is to really tell you some tips and tricks for the job search. It can be any aspect of the job search. With that being said, hello, thanks so much for joining us again. I would love to get your questions below. So comment, ask any questions, and I will get back to those and cover them after I cover a hot topic that just came up this week, actually. And at the end, I will share our roadmap to job search success, which you can click on to download and get added to our newsletter. So, first off, I want to talk about this issue that was a really great question. A client asked me in a coaching session this week and then spurred some more thoughts as I heard a podcast. And that question was, how should you know, like, what does a good offer look like? But it wasn't so much a good offer, it was like, what does a great experience look like when a company really wants you? What does that look like, right? Are there things to be aware of where I should say, something doesn't seem right? Maybe this company culture is not great and I should really think twice. So I've been thinking about that a lot. And I think there's a couple different ways you can look at it. But when someone really wants you to work for them, they should cater to you and show you that they really want you. So what I mean by that is it's a two-way street. Too often we go into interviews and job applications thinking we have to sell ourselves, but they also have to sell themselves. And that's something that I encourage you to remember because it is increasingly more important. I can also say with confidence that because of the pandemic, things have changed. And like I mentioned, this podcast, it was a Harvard Business Review podcast yesterday I listened to. They were speaking about how companies now need to pay more attention because where in the past, there was a lot of talk about entry level people and other professionals coming in and really wanting philanthropy to be a central aspect of what the company offered and advocated for. Now it's flexibility, and it's not just entry level employees or millennials, it's across the board. So employers have to adapt to that as they're recruiting. And I say that because that shows you that employers are starting to realize and will continue to realize they have to do something more to sell themselves to you, to really attract you, right? It's sometimes, if they have a big name, that's one thing, right? Like a Google or an Amazon, and then, they don't think they have to do very much. But companies and organizations really should show that they want you. So, for example, there are some signs you might want to be careful of. One of those things is if you say ask for an increase in the salary offer or try to negotiate another point in the offer and they tell you, I'm sorry, that's it. Like, no questions. They don't even go back to the hiring manager in charge or offer to, look into something. To me, that's a little bit strange. And I'm not saying that it's not true or that you shouldn't believe them, but they should give you that opportunity. And I want you to try to ask in that case if you can speak to the hiring manager, not just about the salary piece, if that's what, even if that's all it is, but about kind of what else you might, some other questions you might have. Think of it as doing your due diligence to figure out if this is the right mutually good opportunity for you and that you want to make the right choice because it's a job, it's a big decision, it's a big life event. Tell them that and that you have some more questions for the hiring manager and ask to speak with them and or with others on the team. It's always a good idea no matter what, even if it has nothing to do with salary. it can help you figure out if it's the right golden opportunity for you. And the other piece is that in that case, if you ask to talk to other people to help you figure out if it's the right place for you, and they say no, or I'm sorry, or we're too busy and we can't make that happen, that's a red flag. I think that's very odd. And if they're not willing to do that, I would say you might want to keep searching. So I'm going to go to some questions now, and I'm happy to answer more about any of that. But I wanted to introduce that and make you aware that the company should also try to attract you. Great question. Could you give some information about video interviews, please? Yes. The number one thing is to treat it, as strange as this sounds, like an in-person interview. And it doesn't matter who you're meeting at the company, treat it like an in-person interview. Prepare as you would, come up with, do your research, take some notes, have them in front of you, have some questions ready for them, dress the part, dress pretty formally for an in-person interview. Make sure your notifications are turned off on your phones and any other devices. Make sure that they can see you. I mean, I'm not a video expert, but in everything I've seen, including we have folks on our team who know this really well, you want to make sure you've got light coming from below you or from the sides, and make sure your head is, in sort of in like headshot mode if you think about a photograph, and that your door is closed if you have a door, or that everyone in the family knows not to bother you at this time. And headphones are really important because it eliminates a lot of background distractive noise. So any kind of headphones you have, whether it's tied to your computer or Bluetooth, make sure you have that. And then I would say, it is harder to really get to know folks that way. So as much as you can do to sort of, even if something strange happens, right, where if your child runs in and asks you a question, or you have an interruption like that, that's okay. In fact, I just read a post this week, where somebody said that their child came in. They were an employer actually talking about an interview, and said the candidate's child came in and wanted to sit on their lap. And she was a bit embarrassed and didn't know how to handle it. And the employer said, no, that's okay. I'm going to go get my child and he's going to sit on my lap and we'll just do the interview that way. So that shows you that usually employers are open to those things. They know this environment is strange. But again, try to eliminate as much as possible because that might end up distracting you as well. And definitely make sure that you, just as you would in a regular interview, make sure you have questions ready. No matter how many times people say this or it's written in articles, I know that it gets missed all too often. If you get to the end of the interview and they say, do you have any questions for us? And you say, no, all the questions have been answered. You did a great job. Thank you. Make sure you've got something in your pocket. And I'll give you an example. One of my favorite questions is to ask about what that person loves about the company and what is something they would change if they could. And that could be a question of anyone. It doesn't have to be in leadership, right? It's a very telling question that can give you a whole lot of information about the company culture, if it's something you think you could handle or not. Definitely ask that question at some point during the interview, and that's a great spot to do it. Also, it's an opportunity at the end to clarify anything. So if you feel like, I don't understand what the day-to-day looks like, or who I'd be reporting to, or who else is on my team, or why is this position open? Is it a new position, or did somebody leave and you're trying to hire into it? These are all questions that will give you a sense of the place. And as I talked about at the beginning, doing some of the, the due diligence work to try to figure out if the offer is, something you want and it's a place you want to be at. Those kind of questions will help you get at that even during the interview, during the video interview process. So make sure, and also another thing would be next steps. You want to be clear on the next steps. So if you're not sure and haven't been told what happens from here, when can I expect to hear from you? What does the timeline look like? Do I have to do anything else in the process, like a test or an assessment? Are there other people you need to talk with? Make sure all of that's clear. The worst thing you can do, it doesn't make you feel good, is to have spent all this time and energy, feel like you nailed the interview, and then have no clue what happens next or when you're going to hear. So I hope that helps. Do you have any other follow-up questions to that on interviewing or video interviewing in particular? Please let me know. We've got a couple more minutes here. Welcome, everyone. It's good to see you. Please ask your questions in the comments. And hopefully I'm seeing them. Last time I realized that there were a bunch of them, and for some reason I couldn't scroll down. Let me check that out. Looks like we're good. I can't stress that enough. A couple people asked if it would be strange for them to go back and ask when you get an offer to go talk to the hiring manager again, or to ask to talk to other people in the team. And I do want to emphasize that it is not a strange request. It actually shows you're really interested. So it's very important to make sure and do that. So great question. Around career goals, I assume you mean in terms of like bringing that up in an interview. If you are asked that question, I would definitely try to stick with what you're trying to learn in your next role and not get so tied up in, well, 10 years or 5 years down the line, I really want to move into user experience positions or something like that. If it's different than what they're offering, try to tie it to the job that you'd be getting in this position and what you hope to learn and grow and skills you want to build on. Keep it simple and current and very short term. Great question. Thank you, Robin. How do you go about searching for your perfect job? A couple of tips, especially for law enforcement type jobs. That's a great question. I think that the best thing that you can do is to, yes, look on job boards in different companies, for example, security type positions. There's a lot of security roles in every organization, from universities to the big guys like Amazon and Google and tech companies, to the smaller organizations and companies as well. It's a huge issue now, whether you're talking about cybersecurity or regular security and investigative work. But one of the best things you can do, and this is true across careers, is to start building your network. So, looking back to colleagues who you used to work with who've left, or other people from your other affiliations like alumni or volunteer work, children's schools, like who do you know, where do they work? Start talking to them about the cultures of their companies and organizations, because those relationships can return to you in big ways. I've seen it happen many times where someone will come meet you even on a plane and come back to you in 6 months or a year and say, hey, we have this opening and I immediately thought of you. Do you want to apply? Send me your resume. So think about it as almost, it's not necessarily networking, but like building your contacts. It's almost like fact finding and figuring out what your next move might be. And in the process, you develop these relationships that can grow into opportunities. So I think we're about time here at 12:15. So I appreciate all your questions and for joining us today. If you have any others, we will be back next week. And I'm going to now drop into the comments our connection to the roadmap to job search success. Click there, and you will also sign up for our newsletter, which is weekly, and you can unsubscribe at any time. But we give additional advice on the search and other opportunities to learn. So thank you for joining and have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you next Friday. Take care.